afternoon. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. Can you guys hear me? Okay, what I want to do in these last two presentations is going to be children's issues, children's health issues, and the last one is really going to be on enhancing brain function. And in these two presentations, what I'd really like to do is try to pull together a lot of the things that we talked about during the week. We talked about the irrefutable evidence for the superiority of the plant-based diet on Monday, and then we talked about proper food combining, or food combining made easy. We talked about the most powerful system known to man for preventing and reversing all diseases on Wednesday, and then we talked about gaining the victory over cancer on Thursday, and gaining the victory over all vascular diseases yesterday. So when I talk about these presentations, I might go through some of these slides a little quickly, and I might refer you back to some of those presentations where I went through a little bit more detail, because I want to make some key points in each of these presentations. Children's health issues, this is one of my favorite. And then one of my top three is the last one, because it has so many implications in terms of obsessions, in terms of depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, even your spirituality and potentially your salvation. So that's a very important one. The only other one that I really didn't get an opportunity to do this time, but I'd love to do it if I'm invited back, is another presentation that I developed called the 10 Commandments of Health Reform, where I take the 10 Commandments of the moral law and I use that as a paradigm or model for what I call the 10 Commandments of natural health, and I have a lot of fun with that. But these two are very, very important, especially the children's health issues. In keeping up with during the week, you guys have been offering some really superb questions. I have a few questions I want to answer, and then I'm going to get right into the presentation. And I want to finish in enough time to give you guys a break, and then get some water, biological break, etc., and then we'll get into the last presentation. Does that sound like a good way to proceed for you guys? Okay. So the first question is, my question is, how does one heal or cure fibroids? And then there's a second question on the same card. What should the normal heart rate be for adults? Well, fibroids is one of the major, in my business, we look at what are the causes and key contributors. The key causes and contributors for fibroids is usually caffeine, coffee, chocolate, those kinds of things. They're really stimulating. And the other thing that causes fibroids is any kind of estrogen-dominant foods. What are estrogen-dominant foods? It's foods that increase estrogen in the system. What is that? It's usually meat and dairy. But you can also increase estrogen. Estrogen helps you to grow. You need estrogen and progesterone for procreation. So, and most of all meats, all dairy, are estrogen dominant. There are a lot of processed foods that are estrogen dominant. And then, of course, you throw in the caffeine, and it really stimulates the growth of fibroids. The good news is it's very reversible without surgery. First of all, what's the first thing you need to do? You need to stop what's causing and contributing to it. And as soon as you stop that, you won't have any further progression, and you might have some regression, depends on what you do, but there's some fairly aggressive natural things that you can do, like poultices and compresses. I've worked with people with fibroids the size of grapefruits, and they usually fire me usually in about 3 months, because by the time it gets to the size of a lemon or a golf ball, I'm not changing my message. They figured they don't need to pay me for me to say, well, you need to keep doing the same thing. They got it. And so I'm usually fired by then, and then when I see them a year, 2 years later, they're gone. People who come to me when they find out about this, they say, wow, I wish I'd spoken to you earlier. I had a hysterectomy, this, that, and the other thing. But if you listen to my presentation Wednesday, if you didn't see it, look at that presentation again. And then you have to combine that with the next 2 days, because I talk about the causes, the contributing factors for all diseases. There's only really 7 factors for all diseases. 7 major factors: the inflammation, the infection, the malignancy, the psychological, the genetic, trauma, and toxicity. Of all those hundreds of diseases fits into those categories. So the next one, what should be the normal heart rate for adults? Well, according to the literature, Not what I recommend, but according to literature, 72 beats per second, 120 over 80. Mine is about 48 to 52. But you know, I'm a senior athlete, so I'm in pretty good condition. But the normal heart rate, normal meaning the general public. The general public is pretty sick. You know, healthy people don't go to doctors. So I'm telling you what they say. And then 120 over 80, my blood pressure is usually 115 over 65, goes down to as low as 100 over 60. Rarely goes down below that. One of the things that work for high blood pressure is hot baths. I tried it. Everything I do with my clients, most of them I try. Haven't been pregnant yet, so I don't know too much about pregnancy. So a lot of the female issues haven't, but a lot of the other things I have. And when I take a hot bath, I can go down to as low as the 70s over the 40s. Don't recommend that for anybody. If you're going to do that kind of therapy, make sure that you're with somebody, because, see, I know what I'm doing. I know how to compensate for these things. You can get very, very lightheaded, and getting out of the tub, you can fall and hurt yourself. Hope that answers that question. There's a question on Alzheimer's. Stay tuned for the next presentation. I'm going to talk about enhancing brain function and all central nervous issues, including Parkinson's, MS, etc. You'll see there quite a bit that would be helpful for you. If and when you become a vegan, this is a tough one. Are you obligated to continue cooking for your spouse? It says spouses. Well, first of all, I recommend you have just one spouse. That's the easy part of the question. If you're already a vegan, can you marry a meat eater if you plan on managing them? I guess managing them. I'm going to save that one for the pastor. The Bible is very clear that we should not be unequally yoked, because it causes a whole host of problems. If you're already in a situation and one gets converted, that's a matter of prayer. You have to be respectful. You need to honor your spouse, love your spouse, and my answer from all of my studies, both spiritually and scientifically and health-wise, my answer would be is you respect your spouse, you love your spouse, you do what you need to do for your spouse. You don't have to do the same things. So that's my quick answer on that. I hope that is helpful. You know, health reform is not about being healthy heathens or being, better than everybody else. It's about dignity and respect. So you still need to respect their. Can I put this in context? Do we have a quick minute? I remember when I first became a Seventh-day Adventist. The health message is what got me to Seventh-day Adventism, and I'm from a pork-eating, hominy grits and bacon and eggs and all of that, and I was a poor man's son. And as soon as I got my job at IBM and started going up the executive ranks, and I can afford all this steak and everything, and then I became a Seventh-day Adventist when I was like 48, 50 years ago, over 20 years ago. So when I would go back to my mother's house, she remembered I was the oldest. Who got the drumstick on Thanksgiving? Jimmy got it. So I come home, and Jimmy, I got your favorite. Now, do you think I pulled out the crossbones and skulls and say, Mom, you know I'm a Seventh-day Adventist? No, I said, Mom, thank you so much. I love you. This is beautiful. But I did what I said, but I'll defer to my brother. He can have the drumstick. I'll take a little piece of this turkey. It looks good. Let me tell you something. You couldn't find that turkey on my plate. But I was very respectful. I put all those greens and lettuce and yams and all the other things, and I tasted, boy, it's as good as ever, Mom. She did get me, she even went out of her way to get an organic turkey. So, you have to be respectful. And so I honored her for where she was. And the Bible says, when you go out evangelizing, when you go to people's house, it says you eat what they serve you. And you don't go in there and give them a health lecture when they're trying to be helpful, etc. I probably said more than you wanted to hear. Is it normal for your system to generate more gas as you get older? Absolutely not. One of my biggest issues, see, I was blessed with poor health. My biggest issues were gastrointestinal issues and skin issues and respiratory problems. I had chronic bronchitis and a whole host of other issues. I'm happy to report to you I'm now a doctor's worst nightmare. A bottle of aspirin would die of loneliness in my medicine cabinet. But it's not normal. It used to be normal for me when I was in my 30s, 20s and 30s. Look at my food combining, look at a plant-based diet, but food combining is very important. And a lot of times you might need a good systemic cleansing. You know, aloe vera, and there's other really inexpensive things. You can take just a quart of warm water with a teaspoon of sea salt and flush out. So there are a couple of very inexpensive ways to get a good intestinal cleansing. I would also recommend you do a liver gallbladder flush and a couple of things just to clean out those organs of elimination. If you remember yesterday, I went through this chart on the accumulation of toxins and the effect that it has on the organs of elimination, so you want to clean those out. Is alkaline water good for the body or not? There's a lot of controversy about that. You know, all of the water and fruits and vegetables are alkaline. That's the best way to get it, and their juices. Alkaline water can help for the short term, but just like anything, the law of moderation is what? You avoid everything that's bad and you use what is good in moderation. What people are trying to do is to force the numbers. So your pH, your blood pH should be about 7.3. So people want to drink all this alkaline water and eat, you know, all kinds of garbage, which is making their body acid and trying to force the water in to make it their system alkaline. Not a very good strategy. For the short term, it would help. And actually, over-alkalinization can lead to cancer just as much as acidification, which is what the normal cause of cancer is. So you need to be careful. If you see your alkaline level getting over 9, that's too high. It should, see, the body has, it likes these bandwidths. And the body works real hard to maintain what is called homeostasis. That's why when you eat a high acid diet, a lot of meat and dairy, you get osteoporosis because it's so acidic that the body says, no, I got to keep this pH like this. So it takes all the calcium out of your foods, then it goes after your big bones. So the body, it will sacrifice organs and limbs and organ reserve capacity to keep homeostasis. So you need to be careful about trying to force. It's like blood pressure medication. To take blood pressure medication to get to 120 over 80 is not a good strategy. And we'll talk about that some more as we go through these next weeks. As I said, I'll try to help pull some of this together. So that's that. Do you know how natural cigarettes, like American spirits, affect the smokers and the secondhand smokers' health? Anybody know what that is? Anybody hear of American spirits? Me neither. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah, and when you cook, see, normal tobacco is 1,000 chemicals, and when you cook it, when you light it up, it becomes 4,000 chemicals. And we know that at least 60 of them are carcinogenic. I don't know that much about this. It's not natural. It's not good for you. But I want to applaud the person who's doing this. Because what it's saying is that person's trying to make a transition. That person is trying to get away. And I applaud anybody. You know, I tell you, I do the Senior Olympics. I do crazy jumping and high jumping. But if I see somebody walking, I applaud them. Any steps you take to improve your health. So this person saying, I'm trying to get away from this. Cigarettes are very hard to quit. I quit smoking 100 times before I finally quit. And I tried all kinds of strategies, and by the time, some of you know what I'm talking, when I finally got it, and when I finally decided I wanted to be baptized and change, it happened, and I never looked back. Water worked. Looking at TV, anything worked once you're ready. And nothing works like the Holy Spirit. So I want to applaud this person. I want to encourage you to continue along the path. And the context. Remember I said I was going to show the presentations? That hierarchy of nutrients. I would say to this person, where does this fit in those 5 food groups? The answer is in the very bottom. It's a processed, refined product. It's not natural. It's not whole. And it's at the very bottom. So I hope that helps in answering some of those very good questions. So with that, let's get into our main presentation. And in this time, I'd like to talk about gaining the victory over children's health issues. This is an extremely important topic. You know, in addition to be a poor man's son, I'm also an old man with young kids. I have 3 kids that are older than most of you here. They're 46, 47, 48, and I have an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old. I know somebody say, have mercy on this man. And I think that God gave me kids, young kids, to keep me humble. Because everybody knows kids are always smarter than their parents. They're tough, they know everything, and they're hard to handle. It's a real challenge. Some of you who have young kids know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's a really important topic, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. Because children are so, so important. They are our heritage. They are the viability of society, the church, everything else. Really important. There's so much in the Bible about children. It says, train up a child in the way they should go, in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And what that means is we need to do the best we can. You know, we have a very big responsibility as parents. And our first responsibility is our kids. I restructured my whole life, my whole career, once I started having these young kids. I didn't do it for our first 3 kids, but I'm doing it for these 2. I think I told you I was having a good old time in the secular world, and I was baptized about 22 years ago. Okay, so Matthew 19:14. Jesus loved little kids. Remember how they tried to say, don't bother him. He's a busy man. What did he say? Let the children come to me and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Kids are precious in God's sight. I mean, so powerful. He said, whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it will be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Have mercy. I sure don't want no, I don't have that much weight to carry. I can't manage a millstone. Okay? So what we're going to talk about, it's a big topic, but in the time allotted, what I'd like to talk about is 7 tips for gaining victory over ADHD and related health issues with kids. Lots of problems. I'm getting a lot of clients, first graders, kindergartners. One grandmother brought the kid to me. He started acting up, and then when the kid threw the chair at the teacher, she said, well, it was time to get some professional help. And I'm happy to report to you, in a matter of weeks, the kid was okay. There's a lot of things that we are unwittingly doing in terms of diet, in terms of lifestyle, and that's what I want to focus on. Primarily in this presentation, you'll see some things in the next one as well in terms of what's happening to these brains and there's just so many distractions. For us adults, it's tough to cope out there, isn't it? Can you imagine these kids with all of the distractions and all of the things that are going on out there? So it is quite a challenge. But let's look at 7 tips. Tip number 1, avoid sugar as much as practical. That's one of the biggest issues with kids. Sugar is very, the dietary history of reform school children reveals that the diet of their choice is sweets, cakes, caffeinated beverages, and all foods prepared with sugar. Foods that overstimulate the adrenals. So, think about these poor kids. They're on this sugar high, and then they're told to sit in the class, yes, teacher, and they're boring. I don't know how kids make it through school. I saw some of the things and some of the topics. I had it easy going to school compared to some of these kids. So sugar is a major issue. Let's look at what it does. It promotes hyperactivity. It weakens the immune system. Remember we saw that yesterday? It can lead to socially unacceptable behavior, emotional problems, violent behavior. And what are we doing? We're going to give them sugar frosted flakes, throw some milk on it. We'll come back to the milk issue. Affects judgment and decision-making ability. Now, these are kids. I'm talking about even 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. I'm not even talking about little kids. And develops addictive tendencies. Addictive tendencies. Let's focus on that for a quick minute, okay? What is white sugar? There's about 23 processes. I kind of summed it up. These are 4 major steps in sugar. It starts with cane or beet sugar. You can make sugar, refined sugar, out of almost anything. But these are the 2 major ones. Okay, about 60% of them is cane sugar and beet. is where they get it from. And then it's refined to molasses, then refined to brown sugar, and then finally refined to white crystals, sucrose. And then you get some of these artificial sugars, then they chlorinate it, and they do all kinds of crazy things. I'm not even talking about that now. We'll talk about that in the next presentation. But that is the issue. So let's look at sugar, how it's similar to heroin processing. Okay? Remember we talked about these are the 4 steps for sugar. Heroin starts with the juice of the poppy, refined to opium, to morphine, down to heroin. Poppy, anybody addicted to poppies around here? No, people aren't addicted to whole foods. You have to, so it's only these refined foods. And so the only difference between sugar addiction and heroin addiction is the degree. It's very quick for heroin, and it's more problematic. But sugar addiction is kind of a mini heroin addiction. So the difference between sugar and narcotic addiction is only 1 degree. Small quantities of narcotics can change the body-brain behavior quickly. Sugar takes a little longer, from a matter of minutes to a matter of months or years. Did anybody ever hear about the Twinkie defense? Somebody went in this rampage, he killed all these people, and the defense was that he ate 6 Twinkies before he went into that rampage. So there's actually science behind this that shows that it really, and thankfully it's not everybody. But those that have the predisposition, you don't care about the statistics. Sugar addiction is the most commonly addictive food drug in the world. Did you see what I said? It's a drug. All isolates are drugs. Any refined food has a drug-type effect. And that last area of processed foods, they're all addictive. Why do you think people eat all of this stuff? Because they don't like it? I tell people, nobody likes meat. If you eat meat the way the Bible tells you, with the blood drained out and out the fat, you'll eat my shoe before you eat that meat. So yeah, you're allowed to eat kosher meat, but yeah, we lather that stuff up, put the salt and pepper in the gravy and the blood coming out and the fat. That's where all the flavor is. So this is the most addictive drug in the world. And I said drug. We are drugging our kids unwittingly. Look at that hierarchy of nutrients. See, I told you I was going to put some more context into it. Causes minor to severe withdrawal symptoms. Did you hear what I said? So, you got to, we'll talk about how we treat this at the very end. You got to kind of understand this. These are little kids. Sometimes we treat our kids worse than we would want, than we should be treated for the things that we do. And a lot of times we forget we were kids once. It weakens the immune system. Remember we showed that chart? How as you added more teaspoons of sugar, it lessened the amount of bacteria a white blood cell can attack. At 0, a white blood cell can attack 14 bacteria. By the time you got to 24, 0. So you basically stop your immune system from working for minutes and sometimes for hours at a time, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. And we wonder how we get these issues. Problems with white sugar, it produces an over-acid condition. Remember I said the body needs to be alkaline. Homeostasis, right? It affects the delicate brain and nerve tissues. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next one. Drains and leaches the body of vitamins and minerals because, see, the body says in order to create this homeostasis, to compensate for this damage that's being done, I need to take vitamins, minerals, and whatever else resources in the body to neutralize that problem. It inhibits the secretion of gastric juices because sugar it's already broken down. So the brain says, oh, I don't need any enzymes. So it stops the enzymatic flow, the gastric juices in the stomach and even the amylases in the mouth. And it causes a variety of health issues. Okay, so where's the sugar? I mean, a whole host of issues, from behavioral problems to hyperactivity, intellectual problems, etc. Where's the sugar? It's everywhere. Soda, sugar pops, you would expect it. But even in cough syrup, Sucrets, Listerine, look at the percentage of sugar in these things. And of course, they put it in the drugs so that it tastes good. They even have orange flavor and all that other kind of stuff for kids, trying to make it easier for them, right? Sugar is not your friend. Now let's talk about what the problem is with any refining, but I'm using sugar as the model. Now, when I'm talking about sugar, think of white rice, think of macaroni, think about all of these grains, that processed grains, okay? Refining, the refining process of sugar, remember I said there's some 20 plus steps you go through? In that process, look at the nutrients, how much you lose of key nutrients. These are very important nutrients for pancreatic integrity, for muscle relaxation and function, for brain function, for the hormones, for the sex drive, zinc, all these, for bones, for muscle relax. Look at these, very important. Look at this. The difference between sugar and other processed foods is that these are in the 90s, the others are in the 40s and 50s. But you see how you're just stripping the food of its nutrients. Now you can see why in that presentation, when I went through that hierarchy of nutrients, I said it's irrefutable evidence for the superiority of the whole food, plant-based diet. So gaining the victory over sugar, whole grain versus sugar-coated cereals, a whole host of things. Use natural sweetness, raw and unprocessed honey, organic maple syrup. Stevia is an herb that's hundreds of times more sweeter than sugar without the side effects. Encourage natural snacks, figs, dates, raisins. How about fast food? What's the fastest food? Apples, peaches, pears, plums, bananas. That's the fastest food out there. You don't even have to get in line for McDonald's. Say in the microphone, give me a Big Mac. All this. Okay. So manage your candy, cookies, cakes, dessert consumption. I say dessert to desserts. And reward with wholesome treats. Okay? Now you combine this hand grenade, sugar, and then you bring in another super bomb, dairy products, okay? Let's talk about tip number 2. Avoid dairy products as much as possible. First of all, how much milk do kids need? Build strong bodies, right? Good, strong teeth and bones. One of the worst things you can put in your body. There's a whole lot of brilliant marketing out there that have nothing to do with reality. I'm trying to make sure I'm on time. That clock, I think, is wrong. Okay. Children, my favorite author outside of the Bible says, children are allowed to eat flesh meats, spices, butter, cheese, which is what we focus on, pork, rich pastry, and condiments generally. These things do their work of deranging the stomach, exciting the nerves to unnatural action, and enfeebling the intellect. Parents do not realize they are sowing the seed which will bring forth disease and death. Milk is terrible. And what's the food of choice for most kids? Dairy products? Pizza. Major childhood health concerns, the allergies, rashes, it causes iron deficiency, lowered intelligence. Biggest thing for respiratory problems, I get a lot of those, little kids, and they got the ear infections, they got the breathing problem, they get inhalers. All you have to do is stop the dairy. See how a lot of the juvenile diabetes, do I have this on? Oh yeah, I have it on there. Juvenile, they found out that I used to think that juvenile diabetes was incurable. And I was getting these kids, and I would even say, because I'm reading, if I didn't have a clinical practice, it would be hard for me to believe how powerful God's divine prescription for health and healing is. These natural laws of health. And I remember a case of a woman, she was young, she was only 26. Her husband was in a presentation like this and came to me afterwards, said, oh, the thing that you said about milk, one of the things that the doctor told me that part of the diet was chocolate milk. And I noticed that blood sugar would be in the 200 to 300, go to 500 to 600 when I did this. I said, yeah, that's terrible. They're trying to keep you as a customer. And I was kind of joking because doctors really are well-meaning. They don't do this intentionally. But they thought that they think that kids need milk. Now, Of course, you know, they don't go to naturopathy school, they go to medical school. They don't teach this there. So they're teaching what they're told. They're not doing any studying or research or anything. It's one of the worst things you can put in your body. The diarrhea, the constipation, you know, those are opposites. So depending upon what you're combining it with, you're either blocked up or you're too loose. I mean, you're not right. And a whole host of infectious diseases. Oh, I was starting to say about the earaches. And they're putting tubes in there. I see kids with tubes hanging out of their ears. And you need to stop the dairy. Use some mullein oil or garlic oil. You can even actually use apple cider vinegar and glycerin to take the wax. There's all kinds of natural things that can address a lot of these issues. And it's sad. That's where they start with the drugs. And they're taking antibiotics, and then they get on this merry-go-round. And then they think that's a way to take care of the health. The good news is there's calcium in a whole host of foods. Now, let me tell you a little bit about milk. Milk has higher amount of calcium than a lot of vegetables. Actually, there are several vegetables that have way more calcium. Lamb's quarters has way more calcium than milk. But milk has about 300 milligrams of calcium. The problem is you can only absorb 25% of it. So you're only getting 75 milligrams. So all these other foods, you're actually getting all 100%. So you're really getting better out of the vegetables. So one of the things I want to leave you with is don't get confused by the facts. You know, these last few days I kept talking about context. When you talk about cholesterol, let's talk about context. When you talk about blood pressure, let's talk about context. Let's not just take these numbers and then try to manage the numbers. People are running after numbers rather than trying to understand what the issues are and then addressing them appropriately. See, there's just a whole host of calcium-rich fruits. Look at all of this. You're loaded with all the calcium you need. As a matter of fact, there's one-to-one correlation between milk consumption or dairy consumption in general and osteoporosis. The Scandinavian countries used to be number 1 in osteoporosis. We used to be number 4. We have the dubious distinction of being number 1 in dairy consumption and in osteoporosis in the world. Okay, what is the single biggest issue with cow's milk? Anybody know what the single biggest issue with cow's milk? After all that I told you. And actually, well, say that again? Pus. That's a major issue for the previous chart, for all the diseases and all of the health issues. But the biggest issue, now, see, the question you should be asking, and people, see, I got some brilliant questions. But the question you should be asking, how come we never had these problems in the early 1900s? How come my mother didn't have it? My grandmother didn't have a problem. My great-grandmother, they had milk. See, you guys are too young. I remember when I was old. Let me see. That's my kid. Says, Daddy, you're old. I started telling him about some of the things that we used to do. In the old days, they used to come by with a horse and a buggy, and they had bottles of milk, and they would say, and they would leave it for you. And it was, well, anyway, they had the milk, and then I tell them about all the other things. You know, the guy that used to drive the street and fix your scissors and all. See, a lot of people don't even realize that the modern medical profession, you know when it started? See, people think it's been around for thousands of years. They think it was around with Moses and Noah. No, 1940s. As a matter of fact, can I tell you a quick funny thing? I'm called a quack. You know what the word, anybody ever do a research on what the word quack means? That's what they used to call medical doctors in the 1800s. Because, you know, anytime you have a problem now that they can't figure, that's idiopathic means I don't have a clue of what it is. Unknown cause, what do they give you? Antibiotics. In those days, the drug of choice was something called quacksilver, which was mercury. They used to use all these poisons, mercury, strychnine, all these other kind of things. And so when you said, I have an appointment with the doctor, they said, you're going to one of those quacks. It's interesting how they turned it around. And so when they called me a quack, I said, no, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a naturopath. So anyhow, so you have to have fun with it. You can't. This is the biggest single problem, pasteurization. Pasteurization didn't occur till the early 1900s. Whole milk is alkaline. When you pasteurize it, you take out you kill after you go above 103 degrees, you kill the enzymes and the nutrients, but the enzymes that help you to absorb and utilize the nutrients in it. So the biggest problem, and you can't even get unpasteurized, it's against the law in many states. In most states, and you have to have these undercover, underground co-ops and everything. So this is where you're right on the money. See, but it destroys the enzymes for proper breakdown and assimilation. So that's the biggest problem. That's the single biggest problem. Can I come back to this? The single biggest one? Okay. But let me show you where you're right on the money. Antibiotics, bovine growth hormone, herbicides, pesticides, other biomagnification toxins. We'll talk about that later. I will come back to that. But think of these little kids. Think of these little women. Is that you, Jamie? Hi, how you doing? Now think of these little women putting cow hormones on them. A cow that's over 1,000 pounds, those hormones, bovine growth hormone. And now give that to a kid. And we're wondering why they're oversexed and 9-year-olds trying to figure out what these 17-year-old guys doing, sniffing around them and hanging. These women, these babies, these kids are confused. So you give them sugar, you give them this, and that's a prescription for disaster. Let me talk to you about this famous 900 cat study to show you, to bring home the point with the problem with dairy products. This was done by Dr. Pottinger, Francis Pottinger. Francis as an I, not E, so it was a man. In 1940s, 1950s. Every time you do this test, it's really revealing. So 900 cats divided into two groups. One group, nothing but raw whole milk. Remember we said that? The guy that used to come around and put it in the bottles, and then you have to put the bottles back out. I don't know what they did with all this stuff. But then the second group, nothing but pasteurized milk from the same source, from the same cow. So it wasn't a different set. First generation, raw milk fed group thrived, remaining active, healthy, and alert throughout their lives. Pasteurized fed became listless, confused, and highly vulnerable to a whole host of degenerative ailments like heart disease, kidney failure, respiratory illness. Does that sound familiar? And we wonder why our kids are having teeth problems. Where's the strong teeth and bones? Anybody remember Wonder Bread? There's some people that know Wonder Bread? Remember when Wonder Bread first came out? Build strong bodies 12 different ways, and then they got down to 32, and then it got down to 12, and then it got to the point where I wonder if it's even bread. But this is the problem. They keep processing more and more, lost teeth. So look at our poor kids. We're having problems. We have learned sophisticated defense mechanisms to handle a lot of the issues that we deal with. These kids don't have a chance. And then we wonder why they're lusting after the flesh. They're addicted to this stuff, and you crave what you addict. And these kids don't understand. And we adults can handle it. We have a very important responsibility to make sure that we're taking care of our kids and looking at what's going on and managing. So the raw milk in the second generation, raw milk fed remained as healthy as their parents. Pasteurized fed offspring were all born with poor teeth, small weak bones, indicating lack of calcium absorption. Remember we said the enzymes are destroyed. Now this is the key. This is powerful. The reason why the 10-year cat study is good because you can measure multiple generations. You can look at multiple generations of cats in 10 years. Human beings, we're heading towards genocide. I'm having a lot of 20-year-olds who can't have babies. 26-year-old women. They think I'm the Pied Piper. They wind up with twins and everything. Just I have nothing to do with it. It's just the health program that I show them how to deal with this. The raw milk continued to thrive. Many in the pasteurized fed group were stillborn, while all those that survived were sterile and unable to reproduce, causing the experiment to end. There was no fourth generation. So we as human beings, remember, this was the early 1900s. And now, look at this, and look at people. I know some of you parents say, I wish that was the case when my daughter got pregnant. Well, I wish I should have gave her some more pasteurized milk. But a lot of people, they're having really serious problems. They want to procreate. They're my clients. And it blows their mind when I tell them that they have to get off of this, because they believe in all of this, that they need to build up their immune system, et cetera, doing the wrong kinds of things. So, good news, there's all these good natural things. There's nut and seed milks, there's rice and grain milks you can make, ice cream substitutes. I make an ice cream that if I gave you this ice cream, you will never go back to store-bought ice cream again. I use dates and almonds and make that as make a nice little the crust, and then you put your frozen peaches or bananas or whatever in there. You freeze and put it in the refrigerator. I did that once with my family. They thought I was kidding when I told them that was not ice cream. It's delicious. It's my frozen, and it's in my recipe book, incidentally. I have a number of these. But anyway, yeah, fruit and nut pies. So, and there's a cashew milk, there's coconut milk. There's just so many substitutes. The only thing I don't recommend is soy milk. A lot of people are thinking that soy milk is good for them, but there's issues and with the genistein and the atsin in terms of how it affects the hormones. The biggest issue I have is that over 95% of the soy is genetically modified. It's owned by Monsanto. And that is, I talk about the 5 food groups and my hierarchy of nutrients. That's not even, you know how you have a bullseye, a target, you have the bullseye and the concentric circles? That's not even on the wall that the target is pinned on. It's so bad. So there are a whole host of problems with that. And then tip number 3, beware of hidden allergies. What's number 1 on the list? We don't have time to go through all this, so in the interest of time, I just wanted to make a point of one so you can see there's a lot of information available, and what we need to do is we need to take the responsibility to learn about this. So you take, now why is pizza so terrible? You take the dairy and then you put it on the wheat. You can see how this is a prescription for disaster. Corn is also, a lot of that is genetically modified. I think that's what the problem is that. Is Frank here? Where's that hand? Oh, there's Frank. Frank gave me some corn, boy. I tore that corn up you gave me. He gave me 3 pieces of organic. Now, I only eat organic corn. I say I need to tell them. People who know me, they know. That corn was good. I tore that corn up. Raw, I didn't need, it was so sweet, it's so tasty. I think I left one back in the cavity of my back tooth just so I can enjoy some more. But soft drinks, Kool-Aid, all of these things, the sugar, the preservatives, the additives, the colorings, the flavorings. So there's a whole host of things. We don't have the time to go through all this, but I wanted you to appreciate, if you're following the hierarchy of nutrients and you're on a plant-based whole food diet, remember I said I was going to tell you everything you need to know about nutrition? I told you everything you need to know, not everything you wanted to know, but all you need to know is if you eat here, you'll have dynamic vitality, optimum health, etc. Now, I didn't tell you anything about superoxide dismutase or paranthocyanidins and all these big fancy terms that you need to have lingual gymnastics to be able to pronounce them. You don't need any of that. All you need to know is the loving God who gave us plants, who knows all of that. And he knows them by their right names, not even by the code names that's given by the food industry. But the food industry makes their money. They know how to titillate the palate. Talking to people at lunch, and they talked about some of the different things that they're putting in as additives to get you addicted to their foods. And some of the things that'll blow your mind. And the good news, there's 25 healthy snacks. They're also, and when I keep referring to my book, anybody who is my students, I have electronic copies of the books, and they get those complimentary as students. And, my students are all, I'm students. When I do these seminars, they're always sending us notes and say, can I have your food combination? I'll give it to you for free. So I'm not trying to hawk my books, although I am an old man with young kids. So if you want to buy my books, see me after the Sabbath, and then and they are available. I just want to let you know, a lot of the things that I'm talking about in my basic principles of total health, my natural recipe book, etc., a lot of this stuff is there. You can just take it and copy it if you want to. This I'm going to spend some time in the next session, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time now, but I wanted to make a couple of points specifically related to children. This is very, feed the mind and the brain. We're going to talk about the brain. But there's special things. And the good news, I was able to take some of this out of that next presentation. But this is very important for our kids. The frontal lobe, feeding the mind and the brain, right? Facts about the brain, okay? The brain is 2% of the total body weight, okay? We have the largest brain to body size. I'll talk about that more in the next presentation, of any of the mammals out there. The weight of the brain is about 3 pounds. However, the brain uses 20% of the circulating blood. The life is in the blood, right? Look at how much the brain is using. How much the brain needs. That central processing unit that we're going to talk about, we're going to really go into a little bit more detail. The brain uses 20% of the total oxygen in your body. The brain is made up of 75% water. We're on these low water content diets for our kids, and we're feeding them dehydrated foods, which is putting an even added burden on the water requirements of the body. And then they're going to have a Sprite or a Coke or something to wash down that pizza, which is a diuretic, right? While awake, the brain generates, there's electricity. If my hair stands straight up, I got some electricity. I'm trying to build up the wattage in my brain. So if it stands straight up, that's because those watts are just flying out. So 10 to 23 watts of power, enough energy to power a light bulb. You know, Ellen White says that if our original parents didn't have 20 times more electrical nerve energy than we have today, we would be extinct as a civilization. And our energy, I'm talking about real electrical energy. You know, those minerals are important in the body because that's how and water, those are great conductors of electricity. She says the Holy Spirit moves through the electrical system of the body. Stay tuned to the next presentation. You're going to, this is a matter of salvation. Studies show that it's affected by diet and lifestyle. Okay, anybody who's been around for the last few presentations, I don't have to go through the whole lot. But the point I'm trying to bring here is think about little kids. This brain development, you know how long it takes the brain to develop? You know, it takes 9 months to have a baby, right? You know what I like about this 9 months? You know what came to me having a clinical practice for any disease, if you have cancer, AIDS, you know how long it takes to reverse it? 6 to 9 months. You can have bad habits for like 20, 30, 40 years. 6 to 9 months, you can recreate your whole body. Isn't that nice? The whole endocrine system can be readjusted in 7 months. Your blood supply changes every 120 days. The stomach cells are changing while we're talking. My son, they're dying and changing. So once you really understand physiology in the right way, you really are empowered. And that's what the purpose of these seminars for. These lectures are to empower you with the most powerful system known to man for preventing and reversing all chronic degenerative diseases. Okay, so they have these little brains that still develop. The point I was making, you're not fully formed at 9 months. The brain still needs another couple of months to finish. That's why sometimes babies, they can't see. They only can see shadows. The nervous system is still developing. What is the best food for developing the brain and central nervous system? Mother's milk. Amen. How about cow's milk? Moo, no moo. No, it's mother's milk. And so it has all the nutrients in the right balance and the right constituents and the right composition for continuing that central nervous system. So that's why I tell my clients, a lot of them say, well, should I go right back to work? You really should try to do 3 months of breastfeeding. Anything you can do over that is gravy. From a world standpoint, the average amount of time most kids are breastfed is 4.2 years. The United States is one of the lowest of the civilized countries. And you can be on mother's milk up until about 50 years old. But you look kind of funny hanging off of your mother's breast at 50 years old. But it's a whole food. It's a complete food. Baby brains, each person has about the same number of brain cells at birth as in adulthood. So think of that. We as adults, we've learned all these coping mechanisms. These kids haven't learned it. The same number of cells. It's a complicated system. But those cells grow, reaching maximum size at about age 6. Now, in terms of the maturity, I'm talking about the cells itself, in terms of the intellectual and emotional and spiritual maturity, it takes up to as far as 30 years. You know, even you know, the civil law says that you're not even responsible before 18 years. They're telling you that you're still developing, you're not mature enough. And yet we're doing all these things to confuse and rattle their brains, and then we're wondering why they're having problems in school, why they're having problems with managing, coping with sexual problems, lust, and a whole host of things. And they're not nice words, but, you know, masturbation and boys developing breasts at 9, 10 years old. These foods are really complicating and confusing our kids. Exercising the brain stimulates the creation of new neurons throughout the whole body, throughout your whole life. You heard me talk about the other day when I talked about exercise, yeah, how we get carpal tunnel syndrome. There are exercises that you can do and variations of exercise to develop new neural pathways. You know, I talked about, I do senior Olympics, so I high jump, long jump, triple jump, high hurdles. I don't do what everybody else is doing. Now you say, well, you look at you. Now quick commercial thing. I'm number 1 in the country in my specialty in the triple jump in my age group. Number 2 in the world. And look at this. This is nothing. I don't train like them. I'm having a good old time. I think that my ministry is going to be athletes. I'm working with an ex-NFL player now who's trying to get these ex-football players, getting them back to health and everything. But the point I'm making is everybody runs like this. Now, if you saw some crazy guy out there doing this kind of stuff, everybody say, that must be Dr. Sharp, that crazy guy. Doing all kinds, and I do different kinds of things to develop new neural pathways. And that's what we need to do. We get locked into doing the same thing all the time. We go to work the same way. We sit down the same way. We need to change, you know, of the 650 muscles, we only use about 50. But if you're doing different kinds of things, I'm not going to go into my act, but you really need to understand this physiology and be able to manage it more effectively, okay? Newborn child development after frontal lobe brain damage does not respond to parental discipline. Anybody identify with that? You know, kids never knew what candy was until they went to school. They used to call it daddy. You know what it was, candy? They used to talk about daddy's candy because I have these dishes that were my snacks, raisins, dates, almonds. That was daddy's candy. Then they went to school and then they said, Daddy, that's not candy. This is candy. M&Ms, they're teaching me, right? Seek instant gratification, okay? No adequate friendships. I seen kids out there, they'd be all together at the same table. This is scary. This is like Twilight Zone. Blames difficulties on others. Saying, well, that sounds like guys I work with. But these are kids, irresponsible, easily influenced by deviant kids, sexual abnormalities, bisexual. Could there be an underlying dietary lifestyle factor is creating a lot of these problems? We talked about ending civilization. And, you know, first you start with the milk. Now, the last time I checked, female and male to male cohabitation do not produce kids. So think of the long term of this. If I believed in evolution, then I can figure about, well, you know, 2 million years, there will be no kids on this planet. If you keep evolving, see, we're not evolving, we're devolving, right? Okay, very important. So you can see why this is so important that we understand these kids. Temper outbursts when frustrated, verbally and physically assaulted. Remember I tell you the kids I'm having problems? Sexual promiscuity in early teens. They don't know what's going on. They don't understand it. They're still developing. And see, a lot of us, let me speak for myself. I'm old. I didn't have half of these, and I was a deviant. So I can't imagine how these kids are handling it. You know, alcohol and drugs, you know, impulsive suicide attempts. The highest, the number one cause of death among kids is what? Okay. So, where's the beef? right? This is the way I used to eat. And you see what I look like, right? Your protein requirements are very, first of all, people, forget about, that's why I say don't go by the numbers. The numbers are wrong. If you go by the World Health Association versus the American scientists, the scientists say you need more protein per body weight than the World Health Organization. Now, human beings are human beings no matter where you are in the world. It just so happens that 60% of the world are vegetarians, so they didn't buy into this protein myth. And this is what I used to eat: bacon, eggs, toast, juice, milk, burger, fries, soda. Wow, I'm getting sick. I was like that? I'm standing up here talking to you guys? Paul Fugman, the whole thing. 4,200 calories, 160 grams. The ideal diet, you know, a simpler diet, just juice, fruit, oatmeal, toast, salad, vegetables, brown rice, salad, vegetables, potatoes, juice, veggie snacks. 1850. You know what your body needs? You know what a guy my size needs? I need less than 1,000 calories, and I need about 15 grams of protein. Even this simple diet is too much protein. Don't worry about, people are saying, where am I getting my protein? Don't worry about it. Your body, you can't even use the protein that you take in. Any whole protein you take in has to be broken down to the individual amino acids, right? And then it restructures itself to make the proteins you need. You can't take a bite out of a cow or a bull or a chicken and expect that to make hair or nails or hormones or any enzymes or anything else. It has to break it. It's the hardest thing for your body to break down. And then you got all these toxins and everything that you talked about, and antibiotics and growth hormones and everything else. It really puts a huge burden on the body. Your body makes 14 of the required amino acids from what? Carbohydrates. Fruits and vegetables. You don't need 8 essential amino acids. And guess what? All fruits and vegetables contain all of the 8 essential amino acids. God knew what he was doing. He doesn't need any help from the food industry or any other industry. Okay. I like this chart because what this shows, if you had a mono diet, if you ate just one food, this incidentally is the recommended amount of the essential amino acids. I'm not going to go into any detail, but you know, they're methionine, cysteine, etc. But there are 8 of them. This is saying if you had a diet of 100% sweet potato, baked potato, brown rice, tomatoes, pumpkin, 100%, got all of your 2,000 calories or 1,500 calories, look how much more it is than the recommended amount. Now, if you eat those very high-density foods like corn and oats and beans and asparagus is more than one asparagus, right? Okay? And then broccoli, because you can't eat one broccolus, so many broccoli. And so look at that. It's not hard to meet your requirements. Medication that affect your mind. I'm not going to spend any time here because we're going to talk about this in the next chart because this is one of the biggest issues with brain. A lot of the Parkinson's, a lot of the issues that are out there, Alzheimer's, etc. But I do want to spend a quick minute on vaccinations as we try to get through this. Very controversial issue. I remember when I had my first of my second set of kids. I had the first one when I was, I guess, 53, and the other one when I was 57. And I remember my wife saying, you know, Jimmy, you're one of the smartest people I know. But I got to protect my kids. It almost sounds like the question about what if one is this, that's why, you know, that hit home for me. And I said, well, Elisa, why don't you read this little thin pamphlet? She read it and said, you got anything else? By the time she knows more about vaccine, she said, you can't gonna get anywhere near my kids with vaccination. I encourage you to do your work. There's never been a peer-reviewed study for the effectiveness of vaccinations ever. I do a whole thing on Ebola and flu and everything, show how easy it is to prevent and reverse, and never. And Jenner, the guy that discovered it, so-called, in the 1700s, I remember when I first read it, before I was a doctor, this was kind of a hobby of mine before I did this. And I remember reading at one point in time that his son was vaccinated and he never got cowpox. That's what it was back then, in the late 1700s. And I remember later on when I started studying, and it said that his son died at the age of 21. Yeah, he never got cowpox, but he died at a young age. So don't get confused by the facts. Get the rest of the story. And this is another one of those things where statistically the body tries to cope with any poisons that you put in there. And many of us can handle it. Some of us might just get a little bit of, we might get annoyed, we might get a bad case of diarrhea, headaches for a while. But if you get permanently brain damage, the president of the National Vaccine Information Center used to believe in vaccines until she had these two brain injured kids from vaccinations. So do your own homework. Don't listen to me or anybody else. You know, I do these presentations. Some people sometimes come to me and say, well, this doctor in the back didn't agree with you. I say, well, you know, what did he say? I can always learn. I learn a lot from everybody. You know, even a stop clock is right twice a day. But my question is, tell me where what he's saying is consistent with the Bible or the spirit of prophecy. Then I'm really interested. But I listen very respectful. That's how I got to where I am. As a matter of fact, that's how I became a Seventh-day Adventist. Arguing with Seventh-day Adventists. You know, you don't want to argue with Seventh-day Adventists about the Bible. Now, they should know health more. But I became a Seventh-day Adventist through the health message, arguing with people at one of the lifestyle centers about two issues. And if you want to know what they are, you ask me a question later. But basic, two fundamental issues. And then at the end of 2 hours, when they couldn't convince me scientifically or logically, they talked about the spirit of prophecy. I said, what are you guys talking about? We're talking about, I was a heathen. I don't even know why they let me there. But I basically did my first doctoral dissertation evaluating this facility. Long story short, they told me that she was a prolific writer. I never heard of her. I read well over 1,000 books on health. And by that time, I read over 400, 500. And they said that she was the most prolific writer. I said, what did she write? They gave me Counsels on Diets and Foods, Ministry Healing. I went home and read it. 6 weeks later, I went back. I said, she's right. You guys are wrong. 6 months later, I was a Seventh-day Adventist. We have so much light, and the adversary has proved his deceptiveness by deceiving many of us. A bottle of aspirin should die of loneliness in every Seventh-day Adventist home with the amount of light we have from the most powerful PDR, medical manual known to man. And then you couple that with the spirit of prophecy, we are supposed to be the head, not the tail. We have so much light. And we're running, we might as well walk around with a CNI dog and a cane the way we are using that light. I'm not talking about this group, I'm talking to the people that aren't here. You understand what I'm saying? Jamie, explain to them what I mean at the end. Okay. Vaccine ingredients include heavy metals. See, I'm going to come back to this again in the next one, but these are the issues. Thimerosal, which is mercury, is one of the preservatives, and then pusses and sores and from diseased animals, horse serum, fecal matter, macerated cancer cells, formaldehyde. Somebody was telling me that even abortive tissue. I didn't know about that when I told them. But see, I learn all the time. Gelatin, phosphates, retrovirus. Look at antibiotics, and other carcinogens capable of causing paralysis, convulsions, coma, necrosis, gangrene, and damage to the brain and central nervous system. And then these are of course, the worst situations. You can have less problematic, but still serious problems. So you be very, very careful. And they give them away for free. It reminds me when I grew up in Harlem, right on 118th Street. And I remember when the drug thing was big. What did they do? They give it to you for free. And then, in no time, you're up to a $200 a day habit. And I saw, none of my friends are alive from back in those days. I'm not exaggerating to make a point. None of them alive. I take that back. There's only one that I know of that is still alive today. And especially the pretty girls. The prettiest girls it's really sad what happens with a lot of this. So, the point I'm making is they're giving it CVS and they have all these promotional things. Come and get your free vaccinations, etc. Okay, enough on that. This is another big one, okay? I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. We'll talk about it again in the next presentation. But this is one of the single biggest problems with our kids. I feel sorry for our kids. I'm blessed to be an old man, because if I had to deal with this kind of stuff, I wouldn't be around. But reducing time the child watches TV, unable to judge which behaviors should be imitated and which should not. They don't know. They imitate us. They imitate whatever they see. Okay, and then there's all kinds of studies. Way too much TV. A whole host of issues increases aggressiveness in their spontaneous natural behavior by at least 160% in 2 years. And then there was a South Africa study, a 30-year study, said where homicide rate decreased 7% after it was up 130% in a 12-year period after TV was introduced. And I say TV, but and we're addicted to these things. I'm starting to get addicted. And I'm supposed to be smart. Somebody was teaching me how to text. I'm trying to stay away from it, but everybody's helping me to be integrated into. But I had a client that had a tumor behind his eye, cancer tumor. I said, oh yeah, I can help you. He was making good progress. He was making a lot of good progress. And then it stopped. Now he had Agent Orange and a whole bunch of other things beforehand because you get background. So I said, because this alone does, see, there's no such thing as a unifactorial issue out there. It's all multifactorial. And I noticed when he was in my office and his phone, I said, oh, wait a minute, what side is that tumor on? He said, oh, this side. It was the side that he had used a cell phone. I said, do you ever use it on this side? No, I always use it on this side. I said, you got to stop using the cell phone. He couldn't do it. His business, he had his own business. He had his eye taken out. He is so addicted and couldn't get away from this. Now, some people, they put ear things in there, but all those vibrations, all that stuff interfering with your electric, we don't know all of the things. So electronics in general, I'm kind of focusing on the TV, but electronics of all kinds. What did I do here? Oh, here it is. TV violence viewing at age 8 in boys significantly predicts the seriousness of crimes for which they are convicted by age 30. Now, my kids watch too much TV. I'm doing all kinds of things to incent them. I even want to pay them to do stuff so that they can limit their TV. It's tough. I know how tough it is out for you guys. I tell you, God gave me kids, young kids, to keep me humble because I think I know something. And it's tough trying to deal with, and even the homework that they get the iPads issued at school, and then they have to look at this program. So what is all of this about? It's tough. It's really tough out there. Long time ago, in the 1980s, this guy, Alvin Toffler, said, constant stimulation of the senses shuts down the analytical processes and ultimately shuts down the ability to face life rationally. This leads to escape techniques that involve withdrawal, apathy, and rejection of disciplined thinking when faced with difficulties and decisions. So you got the dietary stuff going on, you got the milk, and then you have the environmental toxins, and then you got all of this electronic smog going on. It's tough out there. So what can you do after pulling the plug? All kinds of family activities, okay? And you can add all kinds of things. So let's go through, because I want to give us the time to have a bio break before the next one. Let's try to go through the next two. Teach your children how to balance play and work, okay? They need to be taught to work. It's not all about fun. Have regular hours of physical labor. Have regular hours of reading and study. Have employment suited to their years. And be supplied with useful and interesting books. It's tough. I remember, and these kids are smart. I remember once, a couple of summers ago, they were watching too much TV, et cetera, and I wanted to lay down the law. I said, okay, this summer we're gonna read books, we're gonna do this, that, and the other thing. You can't do any of your Xbox or any of this kind of stuff until you finish. There was the Certified Nutrition Counselor program. Now that normally takes about 6 months. We give you 3 years. They finished it in 2 weeks. The whole course. They sat down. They were so motivated. I never saw them so motivated in my life. They were so motivated to get back to their Xbox and whatever those games were. I can't do them. That they just sat there and they helped. I never saw them so helpful. They're 4 years apart. Let me tell you a little funny thing. Don't tell me about it. My 14-year-old, one of my kids, my oldest kid, was breastfed for 34 months. I talked about breastfeeding. So he's a pretty smart guy, but he's not interested in school. The other one, he was breastfed 44 months. That guy is I think he's a genius. He goes to school. He never has, I said, John Michael, he never brings books home. He's always on the principal's list. And so we started this summer. It wasn't working out too well, books. But anyway, he just signed up for our doctoral program. Because I was joking with him. I said, you know what? The youngest student that came to our school, it was a homeschool. See, they didn't have all this problem. Homeschool girl was out there doing seminars and all kinds of things. She was 16 years old. I think she joined at 15 and got her bachelor's at 16 or 17, and then she didn't continue. But he's 14. He said, I'm going to have my doctorate by the time I'm 16 or 17. We're joking about it. He just signed up for the school. Stay tuned. It's going to be interesting to see. Because I'm telling everybody it takes this amount of time. He said this many hours. And usually people are doing it in 2 years, 3 years. We give you 5 years. Now, doctors are smart. I'm getting all these doctors now. Doctors they're scared. I always knew they were smart. They're the top 2%. But the doctors, they're finishing. One doctor, he just joined in March. It's 90 credits. We just issued him his degree. And they write the best dissertations. These guys are bright. But once they get it, see, people think that I'm against doctors when I talk about this stuff. I'm against any health system that's not in harmony with God's natural laws. There are parts of my profession. I'm certified in so many. If you saw the wallpaper I have, I had to walk away from a lot of that stuff. So like I said, a stop clock is right twice a day. All of these health systems have some good in it. Some have more bad than others, but that's the topic of another day. So this is the most important part. So we're going to take a bio break. This guy said, you know what? I'm going to have to run out of here and do something if this guy doesn't shut up and sit down. But let's talk. This is really important. This is probably the most important tip of all of them. We really need to give our kids psychological vitamins. A lot of us forget that we were kids once. Young guy like that, he said, yeah, I was a kid last year. I just graduated from high school. So but some of us are old enough, and we don't have Alzheimer's, so we remember we were kids once. And we weren't so great. And I remember when I was young, when I was 12 years old, my biggest objective was to grow up to be big enough to beat up my father. So I know what these things are. And then when you grow up to be big enough, and then you say, well, the guy did know something. And then something real strange happens. As you get older, the roles reverse. You become the father, and they become the son. That's a whole nother issue. We'll come back to that one if we have time. But, give your children psychological vitamins. Okay? Everybody knows about B complex, right? C is a complex. There's multiple things that are in there, B1, B2. So, what is the most important vitamin out there for health? For outrageous health. What is the most important vitamin? Who said B? B? You said B? Okay. B is the second most important vitamin. Now, the first and most important vitamin is O. Obedience to God's laws. That's the first one. The second one is Bible study. Those are the two most important. All right? And that puts everything else in context. Okay. So, lots of vitamin A. That's what you need to give your kids. Vitamin A is for the eyes, the carotenoids, and all of that, right? Vitamin A has for the skin. This is the most important vitamins for our kids. Let's look at this complex. You want to look at the components of this complex? Anybody interested, or want to run out? Who's interested? Who's not interested? Who wants me to sit down and shut up? Okay, I can continue. Okay. All right. The first one is attention. Recognition, listen. They're screaming at us. Even when they're bad, they're trying to get our attention. We need to give them attention. These are kids. They can't cope. They're not sophisticated like we are. Lots of vitamin A. Attention. Approval. Positive reinforcement. They're not even stop clocks. They do more than two things right. We need to encourage them where they are doing things, and then help them to make the transition. It's so important that we give them positive reinforcement. And then acceptance. Give them a sense of belonging. You know, and as I observe out here, see, when you get old, I remember people that have kids now, and when they were some of the worst kids out there. They were so problematic. And then they're having kids now, and they're tougher on their kids than their parents were on them. That's why you keep saying, look, you know, you need to love them. That's what it's about. It's about love. It's about attention. It's not about, it's not going to work anyway. All you're going to do is encourage them to get out of the house faster, and for the young lady, go to some crazy guy on the corner who tells her a few things, and she's going to get in all kinds of trouble. Guys aren't much better these days. Accolades. Give them a pat on the back. You know, I was telling you about John Michael. I said, you know what? This, that, and the other. Rather than say, you never study, I said, wow, you're pretty smart, blah, blah, blah. And I'm telling him, he said, yeah, you know what? Really? I want to be the youngest graduate ever in your school. He said, who's the youngest that enrolled? I said, well, she was 15, 16. He enrolled. He's 14 years old. So, you know, you encourage them. You just put things out there and try to help them figure out. I pray a lot. I have to. It's tough. I mean, look at the field I'm in. I have three challenges. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I'm a health professional. And I have kids. Young kids. Okay, and then the last part of this is affection. So that's divine. They need a lot of that. And let's remember, how did Jesus teach us how to pray? Our Father. As soon as you say those two first, what we're acknowledging is that we're all children. We're all his children. We need to treat each other right. And the kids will see that. If we're arguing and fussing and fighting, those are what they learn. We need to love each other. We're all children. And then I talked about before, the roles reverse, and the parents are becoming like children, childlike, or grandparents. And we need to take care of them. And it's tough. Here's this person that was, my father must have been taller than Goliath. He was 8'15". And then you grow up and you say, well, you know what, he's not that tall. And he has his, and then, you know, I found out he worked 3 jobs. All the issues that he had to deal with. So, whoa, he was a great man. And then he was coming to me for advice and counsel by the time I was in my 40s. And so the roles reverse. And then they're getting sick, and it's tough. It's tough. So we're all children, and it's all about love. Health reform is about manifesting the highest attributes of the character of God. It's about love, right? And let me end up by saying, here's the 7 tips for gaining the victory. We talked about all these. I hope this was helpful to us. Let me just finish with this is a great book, incidentally. Me and my wife read this, Child Guidance. A lot of good tips on there. But basically what she says, parents should make it their first business to understand the laws of life and health. That nothing shall be done by them in the preparation of food or through any other habits which will develop wrong tendencies in their children. Now, other children too. You know, we as aunts and uncles and children in the church, they're all our children. The children belong to all of us, not just the parents that bring them to the church. How carefully should mothers study and prepare their tables with the most simple, healthful food, that the digestive organs may not be weakened, the nervous forces unbalanced, and the instruction which they should give their children counteracted by the food placed before them. This food either weakens or strengthens the organs of the stomach and has much to do in controlling the physical and the moral health of the children, who are God's blood-bought property. This is serious business, ladies and gentlemen. And you notice, I'm not saying you. I'm saying we. This is something that we really need to all work on together. And God gave us those instructions. It's the most powerful system known to man for preventing and reversing all chronic degenerative disease. I hope this has been helpful. We're going to talk about the brain. But you know, he said to us, suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. Let's take a break. and let's get back together. I think you wanted to make an announcement, right?